So, what's the actual difference between, say, a buzzing bee and a lump of granite? It sounds like a simple question, right? But when you really start to dig in, figuring out where to draw that line between alive and not alive, well, that's one of the biggest questions in all of biology. Today, we're going to tackle it head on. Oh, and just a quick heads up, this is the second part of our 20-part series on Intro to Biology, brought to you by Virtualization Options LLC. Our whole focus today is unpacking the specific traits that every single living thing has in common. So yeah, let's just start right there. What is it that makes a giant sequoia tree alive, but the soil it's rooted in isn't? Or what about a tiny little bacterium in a drop of water? Why is it alive, but the water itself isn't? It feels obvious at first, but you're about to see that the edge between life and non-life can get surprisingly blurry. To sort this all out, scientists don't have some single magic test for life. It's actually more like a checklist, a set of key characteristics that, as far as we know, all living things share. If something can take every single one of these boxes, then yep, we call it alive. So what's on the list? First up, let's talk about structure and form. This is all about the fundamentals, what are living things physically made of, and how do they change as they go through their lives? We're going to start with the most basic building block of them all. All right, item number 1 on our checklist, and it is a non-negotiable. All life is made of cells. A cell is literally the smallest thing that can be called alive. Now, you and I, we're made of trillions of cells all working together, but a little bacterium? It's just one single cell doing its thing. But it doesn't matter if it's one or trillions. If it doesn't have cells, it's not alive, period. And life is never really static, is it? It grows and it develops. And I don't just mean getting bigger, like you're blowing up a balloon. We're talking about a real transformation. Think about a tiny acorn developing into a massive oak tree, or a single cell becoming a whole person. That's a journey of incredible complexity, all guided by its internal programming. Okay, so we've covered what life is made of. Now let's move on to our second big idea, action and reaction. See, living things aren't just objects sitting there. They are dynamic, constantly interacting with everything around them. This is all about what life does. And to do, well, anything, life needs energy. It needs fuel. Every thought you have, every beat of your heart, it all requires energy. For us, that means grabbing a bite to eat. For a plant, it means soaking up sunlight. But the bottom line is the same for everyone. All living things have to take in and use energy just to keep the lights on. Living things are also incredibly aware. They can sense changes happening around them. Scientists call these changes stimuli, and they react. Like a flower turning to face the sun, or you yanking your hand away from a hot pan without even thinking about it. That kind of constant awareness and reaction is a true hallmark of being alive. And this whole response thing, it basically happens in a simple 3-step loop, over and over again. First, there's a stimulus, a loud noise, a bright light, a change in temperature. Second, the organism detects it. And third, it reacts, usually in a way that helps it survive. This process is running constantly, in every living thing, every single moment. Okay, so life has a structure, and it interacts with the world. But how does it keep going? How does it last for more than just one lifetime? That brings us to our third and final section, continuation and stability. This is all about how life carries on and how it maintains order in a pretty chaotic universe. This one is, well, it's everything. Life makes more life. Through reproduction, organisms create offspring and pass their genetic information down to the next generation. I mean, without this ability, any species would just blink out of existence after one generation. It's the ultimate survival plan. You see this everywhere, right? From a mother bear watching over her cubs to a whole flock of birds migrating together. This passing of the torch from one generation to the next is what allows life to persist. Every new organism is just another link in this incredible, unbroken chain that goes back billions of years. And finally, our last checklist item. All living things maintain something called homeostasis. Now, it's a bit of a mouthful, but the idea is actually super simple. It's all about keeping your insides stable, no matter what's going on outside. Think about it. When you're cold, you shiver to warm up. When you're hot, you sweat to cool down. That's homeostasis. It's like your own personal thermostat, always working to keep your internal environment just right so you can stay functional. So let's bring it all home. As you've probably figured out by now, there's no single secret to life. It's not just one of these characteristics that makes something alive. It's the amazing teamwork of all of them working together. So let's do a quick recap.
To be alive, you have to be made of cells, use energy, grow and develop, reproduce, respond to your environment, and maintain that internal stability, homeostasis. It's the whole package deal. I mean, a fire uses energy, and a crystal can grow, but only a living thing does all 6 of these.
And that leaves us with a really fascinating and maybe a little unsettling final thought. What if we could build a machine that could take every single one of these boxes? It's made of cell-like units. It finds its own energy. It builds copies of itself. It responds to things. At what point would we have to stop calling it a machine and start calling it alive? That's a question that really blurs the line between biology and technology, and it's something we might have to figure out sooner than we think. Thanks for joining me for this explainer.